I doubt they're taking them lightly. I think they performed incredibly well and have a lot to build off of both offensively and defensively in what was a much needed get right game. And yeah, Kevin, it was a wild week. And don't get me wrong, I have been on record in my show, on Spaces, and a bunch of platforms to say that Josh Allen needed to be better. And boy, was he better, man. I mean, it was just so refreshing to watch him today because you saw what Josh Allen can be when he just takes what's given, plays a patient game, understands that the strength of this offense beyond him is the playmakers that can move the ball. And he was really he looked poised, confident. So, Kevin, let's take it just bit by bit, offensively and defensively. We'll start with Mr. Josh Allen. You can see I got the jersey on, and if you don't catch it, there's a Superman shirt underneath it. That was not intended, but here we are. So good juju. What'd you think, man? Give me your overall assessment of Josh Allen.
I was taking a look before the show at his spray chart, and it's beautiful, man. It's what everything asked for. I mean, the number one knock against the spray chart that you see is going to be, well, it was the Raiders, who did come off of a pretty nice looking win against the Broncos, who played themselves. The Bills are playing 3 straight weeks against teams playing the Broncos, Joe. Did you know that?
Yeah,
3 straight,
wild.
back to back. It's really weird. So again, I can see a lot of this Broncos team, and the Bills will play the Broncos in a month or two down the road. But it's interesting you can take a little bit away from it because they're playing the same opponents in 3 straight weeks. And you saw this Washington team almost lose to this Broncos team on a Hail Mary that was completed for a touchdown, and then missed the 2-point conversion. So it's just a wild game there against Denver and Washington to complete a Russell Wilson Hail Mary. I was looking bleak in Washington, but Josh Allen himself did everything you're looking for. I thought he looked good in stretches last week against the Jets. I really did. Whitehead bit on a couple of tendencies, and it worked out for him. A high-low play to Gabe Davis that, he found Gabe, throughout the day today, which was great to see when you see him complete those passes to Gabe Davis. But he missed that throw last week because Whitehead jumped it. If Whitehead guesses wrong there, Joe, it's a post down to Gabe Davis. You'd like to see him check it down, but Josh Allen has consistently made that corner throw over and over and over in a high-low concept his entire career. It's the one throw he can make, and he did. He made it over Sauce Gardner still. Unfortunately, that was one of the bad plays, but he's completed at an extremely high clip right now. 31 for 37, like you said, against the Raiders. It's just what you want to see in these games, and you can't take anything negative. 83%. He's completing passes at a rate that no one thought he could. You take away 1 or 2 of those interceptions, and it would be looking very good. But 1-1 as they play the 2-0 Commanders in an interesting game. But other than that, I really love the performance, and they were just dominant. He could have had even more stats in terms of passing touchdowns. He took some easy runs later in the game for his team, but he was finding tight ends all over the field. It's going to be, I think we're gonna have to buckle in for a lot of 2 tight end stats.
Yes, they were primarily, and I'll find the statistics to talk about during the week, but it seemed like they were primarily in 12P and 13P today. I know Dan Orlovsky pointed that out, but yeah, Kevin, I was so pleased with him. And it was just, again, incredibly refreshing because everything I wanted, everything I asked of this quarterback, he did. And it's nice because Josh Allen and his explosiveness and his hyper athleticism, it helps. It does. And it's not something I hate. I don't want anyone here to think that I want to clip the wings of one of the best quarterbacks in the league, because at the same time, that skill set and like his superpowers, if you want to call them, are the reason that some of these touchdowns happen. I mean, man, the back foot throw with Max Crosby right in his face after he sent Spencer Brown to hell, and he just sidearms it to Shakir for the touchdown. I'm sorry, man. Like, that is just a throw that I don't know who else besides maybe Mahomes makes that throw. It is absolutely absurd. And that's the beauty of his game. But when he can just kind of put himself together, understand that it's okay to be patient, that teams are going to sit back in deep coverages and want you to be aggressive, and you can just, take those small routes to Kincaid or Knox or find Diggs in the slot, which, by the way, Ken Dorsey, good job. Good job with that. But that's what you need. And that's what I want them to pull this year, because if you are just opening it up underneath for Josh Allen and keeping things simple, it's going to just make everything expand beyond. So I was so pleased with that. But Kevin, you see my headline, or you saw my headline. I'm going to pull the Josh Allen tag real fast. James Cook, man, and the running backs cooked today. It was a great performance for the Bills rushing attack. I thought that's everything you wanted from the three-headed back by committee. Murray and Harris get touchdowns, but James Cook gets the over 100-yard crown. Let's hear your thoughts on this Bills running back room.
Yeah, I thought early on it was a little sloppy from the Bills running room. The Bills were looking for some drive starters against too high. They didn't get it on the first drive leading to the punt and then the ensuing Bernard interception. But, then he came back in kind of, more in the red area with Latavius Murray. You saw it get going there. They needed that aggressive and up the middle style early on. Then Latavius Murray came back out for the second drive. So at one point you thought maybe this would be a Latavius Murray game because of the matchups and what they saw from him early on in the fourth quarter. But it did not turn that way. James Cook continued to get better as the day went on. A much needed, still was paltry at halftime, but a much needed second half from James Cook that he needed. And in my opinion, for 3 poor halves. So it was good to see him have a dominant fourth half of football. And we'll see which half he really is. We'll see which James Cook we see against a good Commanders team, at least a good Commanders defense, and one they put up a lot of points. And they're 2-0 for a reason. So what James Cook will we see going forward? This is going to be a good test to see, what we have in this rushing attack. 183 yards, 5.2 yards a clip, the 2 touchdowns you already mentioned. But I really like the versatility of the run game, and you're seeing those backs get active in the running or the receiving game too. You even had Reggie Gilliam in there for a catch. You had 2 Latavius Murray catches, 4 James Cook catches. So you saw, them use their running back and tight ends a whole lot, something you haven't seen a lot underneath even Brian Dable in the past or last year underneath Ken Dorsey. So it's going to be a different style of offense, and one that definitely took a week to gel. Josh Allen had to get used to, look, this is a different offense. You're going to always, with the way it's schemed, you're going to always have somebody open. You are. You got to take it, though. And Josh was used to maybe even 21, 22 Josh of, not having anybody open. He's not. There were games last year, Joe, where Josh had nobody open. It was a route running issue. They simplified it this year, and I don't think early on or later in the Jets game he's used to having multiple receivers open at the line, because there's plenty of film that show receivers weren't winning last year. They didn't have the second tight end, so that running game is going to be a good supplement. Josh is going to continue to find this 12. We have to see how much even 13 personnel they played in, based on, I'm assuming Quentin Morrison must have had some snaps, or you can, I guess, or Gilliam. Reggie Gilliam. Yeah. So a lot of good things to take out, but I think we can confidently say this is a 75% completion percentage Josh Allen going forward.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the crazy part is when he had 3 turnovers or 4 turnovers in the first game, I went and looked at his chart and I saw 70%. And I was like, are you serious? The game where he gets his completion percentage up by an insane tick is the game where he has this many turnovers, which tells you a lot about that stat in a vacuum. But one crazy part about the rushing attack today, Kevin, James Cook averaged 7.2 yards per carry per PFF. That is just insanity. I mean, we were already kind of complimenting him off of his rookie year when he was second in the league in yards per carry, I think behind Josh Jacobs, if I'm not mistaken. 7.2 in a clip is nuts. And that's just what you wanted from Cook. That was what I felt like was his breakout game. I know a lot of those yards came on one run, but hey, they had to bleed the clock. It was still the ball given to him. He found the hole. He hit it. But when you were talking about it early, I felt like it was more of an issue where you're trying to figure out how to get more pressure from your running game up the middle. It seemed like they were trying to force Cook to go through gaps that just didn't exist on the interior of the offensive line, but more powerful backs like Latavius Murray, who ended up getting it going a bit, are able to kind of just make that push. And when you have that threat from the running attack, now all of a sudden things get a little easier because you might be able to scheme something for Cook to go outside, which is really his forte. And it worked beautifully. So again, bravo, Ken Dorsey. Again, Bills rushed a total of 183 yards. Cook had 7.2. Harris had 4.7 yards per carry. So another good, impressive clip. Just really nice to see them all get involved. But one final thought on that. 12P, and I want to bring this up. Yes. I feel like the thing about this offense this year that's going to make things so much better, and Kev, I'll ask you if you agree with this, is setting the table on first down. it felt like they were very, very adamant about just positive yards of any kind on first down to make everything set up easier. Because you saw in this game something that I felt like was a problem last year wasn't rearing its head this year, was third downs were manageable. 3rd and 5, 4, 3, felt like they were just in range to convert a first down. And then at that short chain distance with Diggs, Davis, like that's easy. So give me your thoughts on that. Like, what did you feel about 12P today and how it could help the offense going forward?
Like I said, Joe, kind of in the last couple of segments we've been talking about, it's that 77% completion percentage. You don't know what they're going to do out of it. So early on, the Bills were looking to try to establish the run. Like you said, early on in the game, were there those up the middle James Cook runs there? They weren't. But they quickly realized that we're going to still find open people. We're going to try to, mix some things up, maybe put Murray in for a few series and then see if that opens anything up. And it did. And I think on the early downs, they had to be better on first down against the Jets. It was poor. They were actually pretty good statistically on second and third down last week against the Jets. And this week, they dominated at times at stretches throughout this game. I'm interested to see the EPA of each down again. I mean, the EPA of the Bills today was ridiculous. Josh Allen's an EPA machine. He's always going to dominate in that stat, and that's always going to be what the argument to the turnovers are, is that his EPA is so strong that even turnovers, and one of them last week was a positive EPA play.
That's nuts. That's nuts.
I mean, ideally, you don't have a third. They were in 13 personnel in that play, or 23 personnel. I don't even remember when they ripped off that. And the Bills had 8 in the box. One of them was Taylor Rapp, and they unfortunately flipped the field real quickly following that Josh Allen interception. But ultimately, this 12 personnel is going to just increase that completion percentage, thus increasing first downs, thus increasing EPA. And ultimately, it's going to be a very solid year. And it took Josh, hopefully, only a game to realize, like, this isn't the high flying gun and, running gun offense of Brian Daboll that you saw with Daniel Jones struggle mightily in 2 games already. They did come back and beat a really bad Arizona team on a field goal late in that game. But ultimately just a really poor, performance by that offense until late. But, you see here for the Bills at 12 personnel in early downs is going to be absolutely enormous for the team. And Dalton Kincaid is just getting better every single rep. And Dawson Knox is the forgotten one, caught the touchdown today. But it's going to be much of that all season, to where they're going to go back and forth jockeying for these targets. And Josh is going to have a lot of 30 completion games.
I agree with that. And yeah, I can't say it any better. I just think it's so beneficial. And like you alluded to earlier, someone's going to be open. Someone is going to be open. I mean, dude, Khalil Shakir getting a touchdown today was not on my bingo card. And that's not a knock on him. I just had no idea how you'd even find use for him. And he just got open. And it was so much fun to watch. It just felt like they could punch you in the mouth any way they wanted to. And honestly, even against the Jets in stretches, they were sustaining drives. It just led to this one ugly play that kind of took it away. And, cats off, they played it well. But I agree. And it's really encouraging to see that this kind of concept that we had discussed all offseason that, in an essence kind of felt pipe dreamish, just because we ran 12 personnel, the lowest in the league last year. Now all of a sudden we're going to be the most. Yeah. Yeah, we are. And it's pretty nuts because it's so effective. And if Allen is put in this spot where he's just simply managing, I'm fine, man. Because guess what? If teams are going to start respecting that and come up, and DBs are coming up, guess what happens? The crux of Josh Allen's strength, his arm, gets to be put on full display. And that's exciting. Yeah. So let's move on, Kevin. Got to give the flowers. You mentioned it earlier, but a nod to the Buffalo Bills offensive line. We could talk about Spencer Brown, who I thought had a good game. I also want to give flowers to Mr. Osiris Torrance. Now, I have not yet watched the film, but I saw multiple double teams that he was eating up on run plays and was so impressed. And there were clean pockets for Josh all day, a couple iffy plays, but really it felt like they had their line together, and it was so nice to see. Kevin, take it away.
I mean, one of my hot takes of the season 2 weeks ago, a little over 2 weeks ago still, was the Bills O-line is going to be better than we think. And they had stretches against the Jets that proved that. For stretches, there's a few clips floating around of the one bull rush by one of the best, by John Franklin Myers, a guy that does get the best of Spencer Brown, and a one Crosby play that was called back. Ultimately, look, one of the best defensive ends in the league. He's had these aren't easy games. Spencer Brown's playing against Washington again this week. This offensive line's been good. I mean, it's been good. It's been creating that the stat you mentioned earlier about yards, the yards per carry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's opening up holes in the running game. Josh Allen did account for 2 more sacks today. But ultimately, 7 sacks total. Many of them are his fault. Some of them are him trying to get back to the line of scrimmage. Some of them were him, trying to, make a play when, there wasn't one, just like, in the turnovers of the Jets game. But ultimately that stat still skewed by that Jets game for the 7 points, the 7 sacks. So the O-line performs very well. I thought this was a game where that would be the one place the Raiders had a chance to win this. If they were able to win at the D-line to O-line. I like the Bills pretty much everywhere else in the game, but that the Bills O-line was the reason they continue to have success. And if they block like this and they play 12 personnel as well as they did against the Raiders, it's going to be a very nice season, and one where I think they'll forget about the Jets game so that it's not the topic of every single conversation what happened against Zach Wilson.
I'm certainly hoping that, and it probably won't happen, but that the praise is thrown for Josh today, because that really was a masterful performance. But yeah, his offensive line blocked well for him. I do think that one sack that he had where he just got pressure immediately up the middle felt like a missed assignment from him. That could be on him. But when it came to Spencer Brown, bravo, man. That's not an easy task to go up against Max Crosby, who is an all-world D end, and be able to go toe-to-toe with him and play well. Not elite, but well. And that's fine. And that's all I've ever wanted out of Spencer Brown, was just be good. You don't have to be all pro. If you can be, amazing. If he develops into that this year, incredible. That's everything we want. But if you're just serviceable and good for us, man, I'm fine with it, because guess what? I have confidence that the rest of the line is going to be great. I didn't even hear a peep from Dawkins and McGovern today, so I got to look at how they perform, but it felt like they performed well. Again, I applauded Torrance. I applaud Morris for having a better
really
day.
Good, Joe. Dawkins
he was
really
good. Yeah. I see, when I watch games live, my eyes are in a million places. Like, I can't focus on one group. I just figured I'll go back and watch that group later. But yeah, it felt like a complete game from the line. Very encouraging. I'm really pleased with it. And I just hope that, with Washington's D-line, that's going to be a bit more of a test, because that's much more of a complete unit with some great interior defensive linemen. That's really going to be your crux there. If you can win that game and beat them in the trenches, I think you'll know this O-line is for real, man. Do you agree?
I think so. I mean, it's going to be, another game where their strength of just like you could say with Max Crosby, just like you could say against the Jets, where the strength of the team is certainly that front four: Montez Sweat, Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Chase Young. They're pretty deep. I think that there's places to win. That secondary is a place for the Bills to win. I don't overly like the Washington offense, although they have scored points, 55 points underneath Eric Bieniemy in their first 2 games. So that's going to be a big chance. But I think that this is going to be a really big game to show if they can do it against Washington. Say what you want about Washington, but you can't knock their D-line. They're 2-0 for a reason. They played probably 2 of the lower end teams in the league, but got to collect the wins. Couple point games in those victories for Washington. But if the Bills can get it done O-line to their D-line, it'll probably amount to a Bills win, and B, it'll be great for the future going forward, because that was one of the biggest downfalls of the team. And some of the biggest holes so far, Joe, haven't been the problems for this Buffalo Bills team for the reason they're 1-1, I guess, if you want to say that's a problem. The right tackle spot hasn't been a big hindrance yet, and a couple of early tests. You get a third test here. The middle linebacker spot hasn't been a hindrance yet. The cornerback 2 spot hasn't been a hindrance yet. So some of these bigger holes that the team was trying to fill haven't been the issues. Certainly hasn't been the 12 personnel. So ultimately, you had a couple Josh Allen turnovers. I guess you can blame him on the quarterback. You can blame him on the scheme. You can blame it on maybe some sloppy route running. But it's nice to see the O-line gelling, and against Washington will give us a little bit more data that we desperately need. And then I think we can actually make some real opinions on the next week or 2.
Right. And again, the style of offense that they're performing now, and I hope that they continue, is only going to benefit the offensive line, right? Because Allen's not holding that ball for more than a second. It seemed like the whole process was, I'm getting this ball out as quick as I can, and if I have to hold it, then we're accounting for any deficiencies we might have in the line. Spencer Brown himself talked about how they had some chips set his way, and you saw it when they played replays. Like Knox helped them out. I know he passed off to Torrance, and then he was able to get isolated with Crosby, which was cool. They have what seems to be a plan to kind of make the life easier for the line. And again, build that confidence up, get your rhythm going, and that could, kind of pour into your running offense as well, which I think is going to be very strong with this offensive line.